What if the feeling that life is pointless is the first step toward discovering what really matters? We've all been there. You wake up, look around, and something just feels off. You're doing the things you're supposed to do, getting through school, going to work, keeping busy. But underneath it all, there's this quiet question, and it haunts you when everything else gets quiet. What's the point? It's not depression necessarily, it's not even sadness, it's more like a hollow, a strange emptiness in the background of your thoughts, asking you why you're even bothering. And the scariest part? You don't have a good answer. If you've ever thought that, you're not alone. In fact, some of the greatest philosophers in history thought the exact same thing. They didn't avoid the question of meaning, they obsessed over it. Nietzsche called it nihilism. Camus called it absurd. Tolstoy experienced it as a spiritual crisis so intense he nearly took his own life.
Click subscribe to this channel to get more topics you love.
But what all of them discovered, each in their own way, was this. Feeling that life is meaningless is not a dead end, it's a doorway. It's the beginning of something deeper. And in this video, we're going to walk through that door together. But first, let's be honest. Modern life is a machine built to distract us from this question. We're constantly stimulated, constantly scrolling, constantly fed ideas of what purpose should look like. Money, fame, followers, status. But none of those things actually satisfy the deeper question. In fact, they often make it worse. Because when you finally get the thing you thought would make life meaningful, and it doesn't, you're left with an even darker question. If this wasn't it, then what is? This is where philosophy becomes not just helpful but urgent. Let's pause here and ask something most people avoid. What if life really is inherently meaningless? What if there is no grand script, no divine scoreboard, no cosmic purpose that tells you exactly who to be? Would that be terrifying or liberating? Camus said this is the central dilemma of human existence. We search for meaning in a universe that offers none. But instead of seeing that as a reason to give up, he flipped it. He said, this is where we begin, because if life has no inherent meaning, then we are free to create it, not as a reaction, but as a choice. And that's where we start to find power, real power. But before we get there, we have to face one more truth. The reason life feels pointless is that we're often disconnected from what matters deeply to us. We live in borrowed scripts, doing what others tell us, chasing what others value, performing for approval instead of exploring who we really are. So here's a question you've probably never asked yourself seriously. What would you still do even if no one ever saw it? That's not just a motivational prompt, that's a test for meaning. Because meaning is not found in applause, it's found in connection, in creation, in contribution, and most of all, in awareness. The more present you are with life, the less pointless it feels. But to get to that level of presence, most of us have to unlearn something. The idea that meaning has to be big, dramatic, or permanent. That's not how it works. Meaning is made in small things. In choosing to be kind when no one is watching, in creating something just because it brings you joy, in holding space for someone else's pain, in noticing the world instead of just passing through it. Nietzsche said, "He who has a reason to live can bear almost any how." But here's the twist, you don't find your why by looking for it. You find it by living, by experimenting, by failing, by trying things that don't work, by questioning, by being curious, by taking the risk to care about something even when it might not last. And that's the secret nobody tells you. Purpose isn't a destination, it's a habit. A way of moving through the world where you give attention to what matters and let go of what doesn't. So, if you're feeling like life is pointless, don't panic. That feeling is a signal. It's your soul asking you to stop sleepwalking. It's asking you to pay attention, not to what the world says is meaningful, but to what you feel when you're most alive. Let me ask you this. When was the last time you did something that made time disappear? When was the last time you felt wonder, not because something was perfect, but because it was real? When was the last time you felt proud of yourself, not for an achievement, but for a choice? Those are the moments where meaning starts to form, not from the outside in, but from the inside out. And yes, it takes effort, it takes reflection, it takes silence. But that's the beauty of it. Because once you stop outsourcing meaning and start building it, you become unstoppable. You don't need to have all the answers. You just need to keep asking the right questions, like, what am I willing to suffer for? What am I afraid to try but can't stop thinking about? What would I regret not doing if I died next year? These are not easy questions, but they are real questions, and real questions lead to real purpose. So, here's what I want to leave you with for now. If you feel like life is pointless, good. It means you're awake. It means you're no longer satisfied with superficial answers. It means you're ready to become the kind of person who doesn't just look for meaning, but creates it. And that, my friend, is where everything changes. Because the people who change the world, who change themselves, who live lives of deep purpose, they all started with the same feeling: this can't be all there is. They were right. So you've looked into the void and seen it staring back. You've felt the weight of pointlessness, not as a theory but as a lived experience, that quiet dread that whispers, none of this matters. And instead of running from it, you paused, you asked questions, you dared to listen. That's where the building begins. Camus called this moment revolt. Not rebellion in the political sense, but something more personal, more sacred. The refusal to surrender to despair. The refusal to say, if life has no meaning, then I won't live. Instead, revolt says, if life has no meaning, then I will give it one. That's not a delusion, that's defiance. But how do we do it? How do we build meaning from nothing? Let's start by understanding something most people never think about. Meaning is not found, it's forged. It's not something you stumble upon like a coin in the dirt. It's something you shape through choice, through action, through attention. And it begins with one simple idea. What you give your attention to becomes your life. We live in a world designed to hijack our attention. Algorithms, ads, outrage, noise, everything is screaming, look at me, but most of it is hollow. It doesn't feed your soul. It doesn't move you closer to purpose, it just keeps you busy. Busyness is the enemy of meaning. So the first step in building purpose is attention hygiene. You must reclaim your focus from the things that numb you and give it back to the things that build you. Ask yourself, what do I spend hours doing that leaves me feeling empty? And what do I spend minutes doing that leaves me feeling alive? That's not a rhetorical question, that's a blueprint. Once you know what feeds you, you can begin to construct meaning like a structure, brick by brick. But here's the hard truth. Building meaning often begins in discomfort. Because meaning is born in friction. in challenge, in choosing to do the harder thing, even when no one is watching. Think about someone you admire. I guarantee their life wasn't easy, but it was meaningful. Why? Because they chose it. They chose their struggle. They didn't just react to life, they responded to it. And that's the key. Meaning is not pleasure. It's an engagement. When you're fully engaged in something, even something difficult, you don't think about whether life has a point. You're too absorbed, too present. That's the paradox. The people who live with the most purpose don't ask about purpose every day. They're too busy living it. So maybe the question isn't what's the meaning of life? Maybe the better question is what's worth doing even if it's hard? Because that's where meaning hides. Not in comfort, but in commitment. Commitment to something bigger than yourself. That could be art, it could be a cause, it could be raising a child, it could be building a business or planting a garden, or healing your own pain so you don't pass it on. But whatever it is, it has to matter more than your ego, because ego is fragile. It's always chasing approval. True purpose doesn't care what people think, it just is. But here's another twist. You don't need to find your passion to live a meaningful life. That's a myth. Most passions aren't found, they're developed. You start something, you suck at it, you keep going, you get better, and slowly what was once curiosity becomes craft. What was once interest becomes identity. So if you're waiting to feel inspired before you act, you're doing it backwards. Action creates purpose, not the other way around. Let me ask you, what's something small you've always wanted to try but never gave yourself permission to pursue? That's not trivial, that's a thread, and if you pull on it, it might lead you somewhere real. Because the search for purpose doesn't begin with cosmic answers. It begins with following the quiet yes inside you. You don't need to change the world. You just need to change the way you show up in it. And let's not forget, the world itself is absurd. It's chaotic, unpredictable, and often cruel. But that's exactly why your choices matter so much. In a world with no inherent script, every act of kindness is a rebellion, every moment of beauty is a protest. Every time you choose to care, to create, to connect, you're pushing back against the void, and that's not nothing. That's everything. Camus wrote, "The struggle itself toward the heights is enough to fill a man's heart." He wasn't saying life is easy, he was saying, it doesn't have to be easy to be meaningful. So maybe your job isn't to fix the feeling of pointlessness. Maybe your job is to walk with it, to let it hollow you out just enough that something new can grow inside. Because here's the final truth of this part. You don't overcome meaninglessness by finding something to live for. You overcome it by becoming someone worth living as. That's the deeper work, and it begins right here, right now, not with a grand revelation, but with a small choice. A choice to pay attention, to follow curiosity, to engage with life, even when it doesn't give you guarantees. Because in that engagement, meaning begins to take shape. You're not just watching life go by, you're meeting it, shaping it, choosing it. And that is how you build purpose in a world that offers you none. So now we've arrived at the final piece of this journey. We've faced the void, we've questioned everything. We've torn down the illusion that meaning must be handed to us from some higher place, and now we're ready for the real work. Not the philosophical pondering, but the actual practice of living a meaningful life. Because here's the truth that most people miss. Meaning is not a feeling, it's a discipline. It's not something you wait to feel before you act. It's something you build by how you act, every single day. So let's get extremely practical. If you're watching this and you feel lost, stuck, or numb, if you're wondering why life feels flat, why nothing seems to matter, why you're just going through the motions, this part is for you. Let's start with a question that could change your life. What would your day look like if you acted like you mattered? Not in a narcissistic way, not in an I'm the main character kind of way, but in a deeply human way, as in your choices ripple outward, your presence affects others, your words stick, your energy transfers, your attention shapes the world around you. Because whether you realize it or not, you do matter. But meaning is not something you have, it's something you practice. So what does that practice look like? Let's break it down. 1. Show up where you are, not where you wish you were. We waste so much time fantasizing about some ideal future that we forget to engage with the actual life in front of us. But Montaigne, Marcus Aurelius, even modern thinkers like Viktor Frankl, they all said the same thing. Meaning is found in presence, not in controlling the outcome, but in showing up fully for the process. So ask yourself, where in my life am I half present? Where am I going through the motions? What would it look like to bring full attention to the smallest task? When you do this, something strange happens. Even the most pointless activity, washing dishes, writing an email, walking to work, can start to feel sacred, not because the task changes, but because you do. 2. Choose values over goals. Goals are fine, but they're temporary. You hit the target and then what? Another target, another chase, another emptiness. But values are sustainable. A goal might be make $1 million. A value might be create something valuable for others. One is external, the other is soul level. So ask yourself, what do I want my life to stand for, even if no one sees it? That's your foundation. From there, you make every decision through that lens. Will this action reflect my value of honesty, of curiosity, of compassion, of resilience? Purpose becomes not a finish line, but a way of being. Create rhythm, not pressure. One reason life feels meaningless is because we're trapped in extremes. Either we're sprinting towards success and burning out, or we're lying in bed, scrolling, feeling like failures. But life isn't a sprint, it's a rhythm. Meaning grows when we build habits that align with our values, small, repeatable steps that slowly shape who we are. So don't ask what's my life purpose, ask what's the most meaningful thing I can do today and how do I make that a rhythm. Read for 10 minutes, practice your craft, call someone you love, help a stranger, reflect in a journal, sit in silence, create something nobody asked for. These aren't grand gestures, but they shape your soul. They remind you you are not a passive observer of life. You are a participant. 4. Serve something bigger than yourself. This one is uncomfortable because we've been taught that purpose is about personal fulfillment, but real meaning often begins when you stop asking, "What do I want from life?" and start asking, "What does life need from me?" That doesn't mean self-sacrifice to the point of burnout, it means contribution. It means using your gifts, your story, your pain, your perspective to serve others in some way. Because when you serve, you step out of your own head, you stop looping on your own emptiness, and you start connecting. Connection is the birthplace of purpose. 5. Face death. Not to fear it, but to sharpen your vision. This might sound grim, but it's actually the most life-affirming practice there is. The Stoics did it, the Buddhists did it, Montaigne did it. They all meditated on death, not to be morbid, but to remember this ends. And when you know that life is finite, you stop wasting it. You stop waiting for the right time. You stop numbing out. You start asking, if I only had 5 years left, what would I regret not doing? That question is a compass. Follow it. Because death isn't the opposite of meaning. It's what gives meaning its urgency. 6. Let go of needing it to feel good all the time. This is huge. We confuse meaning with happiness, but they're not the same. Happiness is a state. Meaning is a direction. Happiness is fleeting. Meaning is enduring. Some of the most meaningful experiences in life, grief, sacrifice, rebuilding after failure, don't feel good in the moment, but they matter. So don't chase the dopamine hit, chase the depth. Ask yourself, what's worth doing even when it's hard? That's where purpose lives. 7. Rewrite the narrative. Finally, understand this: you are not the story you've been told. You are not the failed relationship. You are not the job you lost. You are not the childhood wound. You are not the voice that says you're pointless. You are the one who writes the next sentence. So write it. Write it with your choices. Write it with your energy. Write it with your attention. Write it with your refusal to give up. Because if life feels pointless, that's not the end of the story. That's the beginning of authorship. And when you choose to matter, when you choose to show up, to serve, to create, to love, to care, you affirm life itself. You say, this may be an absurd world, but I'm not waiting for it to give me meaning. I'm choosing to give it mine, and that is power. That is the purpose. That is what it means to be free. So now I ask you, genuinely, directly, what will you do with your one absurd, fleeting, beautiful life? Not tomorrow, not when you figure it out, but today. Because purpose isn't something you wait for, it's something you choose.